Welcome to the center of the universe and the home of the 18-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts. This is the X's and Argos podcast with Ben Grant and JB.
Welcome to the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. Ben Grant, joined as always by JB, and we are here to get you set for Thursday night. The circus is in town. It's the annual C&E game, and for the first time since 2019, the Argos will welcome the Saskatchewan Roughriders to BMO Field. Lots to talk about today. We've got the return of Chad Kelly as his suspension is over, and we'll talk about some of the details of that and what to expect from Chad Kelly going forward. Also, a couple of transactions. Brian Scott was released. Daniel Joseph signed in Edmonton, Trevion Tate signed in Saskatchewan, Jordan Bird with Hamilton, so a lot of Toronto-related transactions. Former Toronto coach Chris Jones is Hamilton's new defensive coordinator or senior defensive assistant. We'll get into that a little bit. Plus, we've got Pick 6, our game preview, injury reports, OCDC One Thing predictions, Put Me Down for 20, and our CFL picks. All that and more is coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. JB, Something in the Water Brewing is the perfect place to go before any game, and I highly recommend it this Thursday. There is nothing better than a beautiful sunny afternoon going down to the patio at Something in the Water. They've got so many amazing beers to choose from, including Longboat Pale Ale. That's the beer that was made for fans of the Double Blue, but they've got a lot of selection as well. They've got award-winning beers, a couple beers that were recognized globally, and so you can't go wrong with Something in the Water, whether it's one of their seasonal beers or one of their year-round beers. They're all winners. And there's also non-alcoholic beer if you want to pick up some of that too. They have a wide selection, a variety of drinks to offer, and you can get food to sit on the patio. It's in Liberty Village, steps from BMO Field and steps from Lamport Stadium. Make sure you drop by Something in the Water Brewing. All right, JB, let's get to our first topic. So the CFL reinstated Chad Kelly on Sunday, and he completed, of course, his 9-game suspension. That included mandatory counseling and an independent psychological evaluation. Part of the condition to him coming back was signing what's sort of called a last chance agreement, and he's got to meet certain criteria going forward if he wants to continue on with his CFL career. And so let's just address that a part of this first, Chad Kelly returning to the team, and then we'll get into the football side of it as well after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated issue. I know there's a lot of strong feelings about why he was suspended and whether he should return. You and I have had a lot of conversations about it. I think where I come down is that I don't have the information about what happened specifically. The league did an investigation. The league levied a suspension and required courses and therapy for Chad. He fulfilled their expectations. He was able to have a conversation with the commission, was reinstated, and the original civil suit was settled with the plaintiff to both sides' satisfaction. So where I sit, it looks like this is has been handled appropriately, and that they have involved the appropriate people to make sure that it was handled appropriately. And I don't have any information to suggest that it wasn't. So I'm looking forward to his return, and I think that that everything was done correctly from where I sit.
And I think it's important to acknowledge in this too the importance of what we're talking about here as well. And I think that I think it does a disservice not to address that this is a really important topic, and it can't be just glossed over and
exactly
forgotten about too.
No, exactly. I don't think there's any diminishing or any suggestion that workplace environments should be safe for all people of all gender, of all religious, sexual, cultural situations, whatever the case may be. That workplaces should be safe and comfortable for everybody, and when they're not, then people should be punished, and the appropriate changes need to happen. I don't think it changes how I feel about this issue or the importance of it. I feel that it was taken seriously, and I would be the first person to suggest if I felt it wasn't. I feel it was taken seriously by the league, and I feel that they levied a correct punishment, and that Chad has undergone a lot, and so I feel that I have no reason not to agree with the league that they feel that this is the correct decision.
I was pleased to see in Chad Kelly's media availability today that he acknowledged the need for this to be an ongoing thing. This is not just something that, okay, well, that's done with now. And of course, that would be a terrible approach to something as serious as this. This has to be something that continues on going forward. It's like, it's like the idea of, this is not a problem that in society is just like gone now and ceases to exist. This happens on a daily basis in this country, around the world, and needs to continue being addressed and needs to continue being taken seriously. And so I was glad to see that he included that as part of his responses today to the media, to say that, just because the suspension is over doesn't mean that he has finished learning and so forth. So that's an important part of this for everybody.
The Argos response as an organization, also through Keith Pelly and MLSE, was very clear that they were making changes to the workplace and that they were going to strive to make sure that incidents like this didn't happen again, and that they were going to do education for their employees. I think those are all positives. I think that is a good example to set. I mean, you would hope not to have to make changes, that they would have already been in place, but I think that as an organization, as a sports league, they have taken the idea of a toxic work environment incredibly seriously, and I think have brought a lot of attention to it. And I'm happy to hear that the Argos are going to make changes, moving forward, and make it a priority as an organization in MLSE.
It was a circus down at Lamport Stadium today for this practice. Usually there's not a lot of media there. And today it looked like I had my kids with me down to watch practice, and they asked if someone was making a movie because there were so many cameras on site, from, TSN and Sportsnet, CP24, CTV, CBC, like you name it. Everybody was there. Just a huge crowd for this media availability, and I'm not knocking them for that. I think there should be a large media presence for something like this. I think that's appropriate, but I would also love to see that sort of media coverage there for the positive things. Like I can only imagine, like the Argos as an organization must be frustrated to see something like that, because you see all the coverage and all the cameras and all the networks there. But it would be nice if that same sort of coverage were also there when there was a positive story, when there was, Grey Cup, for example, a couple years ago, or playoff runs, or hospital visits, or charitable work. And but I don't think I've ever seen that many or that much media presence for an Argos practice. That was something else. Chad Kelly, in terms of how he looked on the football field today, really good. The team session, this sort of like offense versus defense, was by far the best I have seen all season. It was actually, I don't think I even saw anything last season that was that electric from an offensive point of view. It seemed like every single pass went for a touchdown. It opened up running lanes as well, as DBs started to look around like, I'm not getting beat on this again. But yeah, it was bombs away, and it seemed like Chad couldn't miss. So there wasn't it didn't seem like there was any rust on there. And a question that I've been asked a lot over the last 24 hours is whether or not Chad Kelly should start, based on the fact that Nathan Rourke, after only 3 days practice, didn't really look very good in BC. And Chad Kelly's now had 3 days practice and then a walkthrough tomorrow before playing. Should he maybe sit for a week? And I think the answer is no on this. I think even if Chad doesn't look as good and as ready to go as he was in practice, I think Chad automatically, just as I think with Nathan Rourke, I think Nathan Rourke gave BC a better chance to win than Dolegala, who was released. And I think the same thing can be said for the Toronto Argonauts. I think Chad Kelly gives the Argonauts the best chance to win, even if he's not operating at 100%. And I do think there will be some signs of rust in there. But Chad Kelly's situation is very different from Nathan Rourke's situation. Nathan Rourke flew like not just across the country, but like across the continent, and had 3 days practice after spending over a year and a half learning 4 different playbooks in a different league on 4 different teams, and suddenly had to switch and acclimate himself to CFL rules, to the CFL game, to the CFL field, and then learn all of his new teammates, half of which he had never played with before. And so that is a very different scenario than Chad Kelly, who hasn't been doing any of those things. He's been either in Toronto or in New York and working with his quarterback trainer, and it's all been CFL related stuff. It's been CFL film, it's been CFL prep. He knows his teammates. Mackay Polk's the only guy that's sort of new to him amongst his projected starters for this week. And so I don't think that's at all the same scenario as Nathan Rourke. And I don't know if we're going to see Chad at 100%, but I think you're going to see most of what Chad Kelly has to offer on Thursday. Let's get into some of the player transactions from this week, JB. Let's lead with I think maybe the most difficult one for fans, which was the release this morning of Brian Scott. And I think we knew this was coming. The Argos weren't going to go forward with 4 quarterbacks. Brian Scott was last on the depth chart when Chad Kelly wasn't active. With the activation of Chad Kelly, I wasn't surprised by the transaction, but it's an upsetting transaction nevertheless, because you hate to see good guys get released from the organization, and Brian Scott was absolutely a great guy, a fan favorite. And when's the last time we had a fan favorite that had such limited playing time? Like, he just didn't get on the field very much at all, and yet everybody loved Brian Scott in the Toronto Argonauts organization. The fans love Brian Scott. He just made himself available and accessible, was kind, was gracious. He was supportive of everybody that was involved in the league and with the Toronto Argonauts. And so he'll be missed for sure. And he's a talented quarterback. And so I don't think he'll be out of work for very long. And hopefully he lands in a situation where he can be used and he can be effective. And I'd love to see his journey continue, certainly.
He was always very kind to us. That it's an incredibly hard position to move up the depth chart more than any other position, because you just don't get the reps, you don't get the look at practice. So it's hard, but I agree with you that I think that hopefully he gets another shot. You look at Montreal and Alexander. He was 4th on the depth chart. Sometimes you just need to be given a chance, and you need sort of traumatic injuries on your team for that to happen. But I would love to see, potentially, there's certainly a lot of teams that know Toronto well, whether it be Hamilton or Saskatchewan potentially, to give him a run. I hope he gets another chance, because he certainly was everything you would hope for in a professional football player and a member of the Argos.
And with the other transactions, Daniel Joseph wasn't with the Argos very long, but he signed with Edmonton. That's no surprise. Edmonton's one of those teams that loves signing former Toronto guys. It feels like everybody that walks out the door in Toronto ends up opening a door in Edmonton or Hamilton. He's one of those guys. And then Trevion Tate signed with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They've had so many issues on their offensive line with injuries. I don't know if there's any other single positional group in the CFL that's maybe been banged up that much. Toronto's linebacking core maybe, but Saskatchewan's O-line has struggled. So Trevion Tate lands there. And then Jordan Bird signed in Hamilton. He was another fan favorite. Actually, both Birds were fan favorite, BJ Bird as well, in training camp. I think part of it's the name too, but Jordan Bird's an exciting player. And so I'm excited to see him get a run in Hamilton. He's one of those guys where I feel like, and this happens to a lot of talented players, where if they had just had one position throughout their entire football life, I think Jordan Bird would be a staple as a professional football player. But he had a lot of talent, and so he bounced around a lot. He played quarterback, he played running back, he played slot back, wide receiver. Like, he played everything except for offensive line on the offensive side of the ball, kick return, punt return, and he really became known as a return specialist. But I'm hoping he gets some time. Like in Hamilton, they're in a situation there where, they're probably not fighting for playoffs and stuff like that. I would love to see him actually get a chance to work and have steady work with the same positional coach and turn into something, because I do think there's some potential there. And speaking of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, JB, your man Chris Jones has resurfaced. It turns out it wasn't very long that we had to wait. He is the new senior defensive assistant in Hamilton, and he will be calling the plays. Mark Washington was relieved of his coordinator duties, which I think is a shame, because I think I think he has, over the years, has done a great job. This year has been really rough, and they've now had 2 coordinators let go from that organization. Chris Jones, does he make the Tiger Cats better right away?
Oh, God. I don't know what's going on in Hamilton. I mean, potentially he does, because sometimes, being a coach is a very tricky thing. You have a philosophy, you have systems that you put in, and I'm not saying this is happening, but often on teams that don't win, players don't believe in the system, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. They don't play the system as quickly or as confidently as they should. Therefore, it fails. Therefore, they feel they don't need to play the system anymore, and you basically have a bit of a mutiny. So if that's the case, I think we'll know immediately, because if he puts in a more straightforward system, then the talent will shine. And I think that they will immediately get better. If they don't immediately get better, then you're probably looking at a talent deficiency rather than a system issue, and that's a much deeper problem. So I'm very curious about this first Hamilton game, because I think if they install something very simple and fast, and Hamilton is successful, then I think that we'll see where they're at. And I mean, if I were the head coach, I wouldn't be super pumped that Chris Jones was on my staff. But if you can win some games, maybe they can pull together. I mean, they certainly have talent. So their record does seem a little bit out of whack with the quality of players they have.
Yeah, it does. But they've looked terrible for some of these games. It's just, I don't know what it is that they haven't been able to quite bring together. And it's mostly been on that defensive side of the ball. So we'll see if he's able to change things there. When he's like just a defensive coordinator, I think that might be a better spot for him. I think he had a lot of jobs in Edmonton, but we saw him in Toronto in 2021 calling.
He has a lot of Argos on the team.
He does, yeah. He knows a bunch of those guys. It was perfect. He went from all the Argos that he had in Edmonton to all the Argos that he now has in Hamilton, and so yeah, he's familiar with those guys, and those guys are familiar with his system. But yeah, in 2021 as the defensive play caller, I thought he was great. And I think, we've seen over the years, from his time in Montreal doing that same role. And then, of course, in the Grey Cup run in 2015. So like he can be a highly effective defensive coordinator. I think the league is better with Chris Jones in it. I think it's a more entertaining league with Chris Jones in it. And so I'm interested to see what changes he makes in Hamilton. Let's get into our Pick 6 question for the week. And Pick 6 is brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. This is a segment that we have every week where you get a chance to ask us a question. If we choose your question to answer on this podcast, then you win a 6-pack of beer from Something in the Water Brewing. And our winner this week is Nick Small, who had a question that was, I think, a little bit out of left field, but in a way is very timely, because it is video game release season, and there's been a lot of talk around the CFL over the last few weeks, really about the last month since NCAA 25 came out, about CFL video games and customizing CFL teams on NCAA 25, for example. Nelson Hakowich, who's a Riders fan, has done a fantastic job creating every CFL team, every CFL player, every CFL stadium. Well, you don't really create the stadiums, but you choose the appropriate college stadium to be BMO Field, Princess Auto, and so on and so on. And yeah, he's done a fantastic job with that. If you wanted to look that up, if you have NCAA 25, you want to look that up yourself. His username is Hack28YQR. And if you search that up, you'll see all 9 teams. Now, the one thing is you have to name players yourself, just the way that it works. But if you're okay that their jersey name is something different than who you know them to be, the numbers are all correct. They've all got the right look, and he's done a really nice job with skills as well for that, if you want a CFL side to this. And of course, Madden, the new Madden's coming out too, and they're apparently going to have customization there too. So I'd look for Nelson to once again, probably, if he's not sick of doing this so far, but he's done such a great job with NCAA 25. Hopefully, he brings the CFL into Madden in the same way. So I would check out that account again, Hack28YQR. Let's get to the next question. So he says, there's been a lot of attention drawn around a certain college video game. Given your experience as football coaches, what do you see as the strengths or weaknesses of video games as tools to educate kids about football? And then the second part of the question is, do you want a CFL video game? And the second part, I think we could just say yes, collectively, yes, we absolutely want a CFL video game. That would be amazing. There are some out there, but I would really like a high budget one. I would love for Madden to also include a CFL component to it. I don't think it's happening, but I would love to actually see that. It makes a big difference. Like if I look at, like, my son loves playing football video games on our PS5, and he could name every single player in the NFL. Every single player in the NFL. You ask him to name the starting lineup for any given team, and he can do it. And it's because of his time playing Madden. Now, he can name all the Argos, but not any other team in the CFL. And it's because they don't have them in a video game that way. And so, yeah, I would love to see a CFL video game. I think that would go a long way to getting kids really interested. And I really see that firsthand with my son there. But let's answer the other part of the question. Like, how do you see, what do you see as the strengths or weaknesses of video games when it comes to educating young football players, JB?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I would love to see some company create a Canadian Football League game because, I think one of the things that hurts the CFL is that the kids don't play the game. And that's also a factor with fantasy, is because of the nature of the CFL schedule. It's not based around one day. It's harder to play fantasy, and those two areas definitely reduce name recognition to the game. You would think that playing video games would help players understand route concepts or defensive concepts. That has not been my experience, that playing the video game helps them understand anything about anything. In fact, it is harder to get people to play football because they would rather just play video games all the time. So I think I wish, playing Madden helped them understand, philosophically what cover 2 and cover 3 might look like. But I would have to declare video games as the enemy of high school football at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know if I see it quite the same way as you, but because I think there's potential to it. I agree with you that it's not really helping, but I think it could. But it takes the right person to look at it the right way. Like, you can use it as a learning tool.
It feels like it. I agree. It certainly feels like it should help.
But I see, like, again, going back to my son, like watching him play, like he knows, like he's good at he was pretty good at reading coverages and stuff anyway. But he knows, like, he recognizes, he'll see. He often plays as the Bengals, and if he's playing NCAA 25, he'll play as like LSU or Michigan or something like that. And the thing is, he'll recognize it. He'll have like a post go concept on one side, and he knows full well that he's looking at cover 3, because I'll ask him, I'm quizzing him and trying to get him to learn something out of it. I'm like, what's the defense? He's like, cover 3, and then he just throws the deep route right into the coverage, and his guy makes like a sort of dunk catch and goes in for the touchdown. I'm like, why did you throw a go route down the rail into cover 3? He's like, because I can make a dunk catch and score a touchdown. He's like, I know how to push the sensational catch button or whatever, and so he's able to get out of it. So that has not helped him with his decision making that way, because it doesn't necessarily work like that on the field. But you can see the potential for it working. I haven't seen that translate myself yet, but I have heard NFL coaches talk about having quarterbacks who know a little bit more of the language. College coaches know that say they have guys that know a little bit more about the language because more of that is available than it was before. But I don't know. I'm not convinced that everybody is using video games the right way, to answer your question, Nick. So great question. I hope you enjoy your 6-pack of beer from Something in the Water. And maybe we'll have to, Nick, do an online game. So I'm terrible at both Madden and NCAA 25, but Nick, I will gladly take you on someday, and we'll have to see how that goes. All right, JB, let's get to the game preview, the C&E game. So first of all, it's going to be a big crowd. It's always a big crowd for the C&E game because with your Argos ticket, you get free admission to the C&E grounds, which saves everyone $25 right away. So if you're thinking about it, you haven't made the decision yet, 100%. Come on down to the game. Spend the day at the C&E. There's a lot of... JB, were we going to go to the food building before we go in? Yes, we're going to have to check that out.
I was thinking about that as I was driving today. Indeed, we will pregame.
There's some really interesting ones, I know. And actually, it was funny enough, it was Nick Small's tweet that I saw, talking about our last contest winner. He put a tweet out a few days ago talking about some of the fare that he was sampling there, including Fruity Pebbles fried chicken and avocado ice cream. So there are some interesting options for us to try. So we'll have to document whatever it is we pick up in the food building on Thursday. So yeah, great atmosphere for this game. And again, it is such a circus, the C&E game, because you've got BMO Field right there, and then from our vantage point in press row, we've got off to our right is the giant Ferris wheel, and then off to the left is like the midway, and it's lights and noise and sound, and then you've got the packed environment in BMO Field as well, because the game usually does so well. So I'm excited about this one. But in terms of the game itself, it's a pretty important one too. Things are getting very heated in the West right now. Is a logjam and all 5 teams are in it. You can see on the standings, if you're watching on YouTube, on the standings behind me, Winnipeg's now moved into 3rd place after their horrendous start to the season. And everyone is jumbled all together. BC's dropped 4 in a row. It is anybody's division. And in the East, the Argos are running out of weeks if they want to make a push to try and catch the Montreal Alouettes. They've still got a chance to win that season series coming up in a couple weeks' time. And they just can't afford to drop any more games because it seems like the Alouettes win every week. And of course, they're chasing Ottawa as well. So this is a huge game that they can't afford to drop. They can't especially afford to drop home games. They've played very well at home. And so this is again, another one of those must-win type feel games for both squads. And it's, again, the second rematch of Coach Mason and Coach Dinwiddie, which is going to be a fun series to monitor going forward, too.
Exactly. No, I think chasing Ottawa is, look, I don't know what to say. Clearly, Ottawa is just going to keep winning. So I've given up not understanding what's happening there. They want to keep pace with Ottawa. Winning home games has always been their strength. Saskatchewan is going to be a tough match, but with Oled out, that's a big loss for Saskatchewan. He's a big part of their offense. I think and I think you want to get off to a good start with your starting quarterback coming back. So there's a lot in the mix. I'm really excited for this game.
Let's take a look at that injury report for both squads. For Toronto, it's misleading. Like Toronto, John Hodge ran an article earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, showing that Toronto was the most injured club so far this season. Not surprising. They've had 12 guys on the 6-game injured list, I think 6 of whom are starters, basically all season long. It's been a number like that. And I think they've currently got 12 guys on the 6-game right now. But guys are starting to become available. So the injury report looks light, but like I said, it is a bit misleading. Daniel Adeboboye appeared on the injury report, did not practice Monday, went full today. He's listed as questionable right now. Isaiah Cage was limited Sunday and then full Monday, full Tuesday. He is available, which is huge. Tommy Neild has been practicing. He's been listed as out for this week. He's trying to rehab from that hand injury, and I think he's trying to get himself back up to speed in the meantime physically. And then the really exciting one is Quincy Moget, and I wonder if he is going to be able to dress this week. I suspect he is, based on Mike Hogan wrote an article on Argonauts.ca, and it sounded like he was going to go. He's listed as available. He went full Sunday, full Monday, full Tuesday. And, I got to say, like, looking at him at practice today, he looked up to speed. He looked ready to go. It's not always easy for me to tell watching practice because sometimes it's just in the little details, and sometimes it's into talking to the player afterwards about how they felt and how things went. But to my eye, he looked ready to return, and so he's listed as available. That would be huge to get their Sam linebacker back. So from the Argos injury standpoint, yes, there are a ton of guys still banged up. Yes, it would be great to get Brinkman and McManus and so many other guys back. But I think if they could add Quincy Moget, and I'd love to see Adeboboye be able to play this one too. I think those would be huge for this week. Looking at Saskatchewan's injury list, the two big ones, AJ Ouellette is listed as out, and Mitchell Picton is listed as out. Those are big losses. More so, I think Ouellette than Picton's. Picton's made some huge plays over the last few weeks, seemingly always in the fourth quarter. But AJ Ouellette, it's not just the offense being kind of centered around him, but the energy that he had the last time these two teams played was, it was up here, and missing out on that little spark that he might have been able to provide for them going up against his former team, I think is a big deal. I do like how they run the ball without him. I actually think they, it's funny, I think they run actually more effectively without him, but I think some of the spark, some of the energy is lost, and it's hard to quantify through stats. So I do think that is a big loss for the Roughriders. And Keon Schaefer-Baker is listed as questionable. That would be big for Saskatchewan if he could come back for this game. And that, not to spoil my OCDC later, but if he's available, that does change a little bit about how I might go about attacking the Toronto defense if I'm the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So those are the injuries that stand out. But Saskatchewan is as banged up a team as just about everybody. They weren't quite as high on that three-down nation list as Toronto and Calgary, but you look at what's gone on, especially within that offensive line group, it's been a bit of a rough year for them injury-wise. And speaking of OCDC, JB, it is time for OCDC. For OCDC, we will take a look at both sides of the ball. We're going to change it up this week, and we're going to start with you, JB. So we're going to start with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. JB, you're going to give us your defensive plan if you were the defensive coordinator for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and then I'll tell you about my offensive plan for the Riders when we switch ends there.
Well, I think it's a very challenging situation for Saskatchewan. Obviously, you have no film this year of what they're going to do with the starting quarterback in. So I think that you're definitely. I think if you look at how Rourke tried to do a little too much, now I don't know if that will happen again or not. But there's of course a natural human desire to come back and to want to show the locker room that that you are a contributor, that you are here to help them win. So I think there's only naturally going to be a desire to push the ball down the field, to take big play options. And so for me, if I'm Saskatchewan, I'm going to go hunting for those big play interceptions. I'm going to give the underneath stuff because I don't think that Chad Kelly is, even last year, but certainly this year, I don't think he's coming back to try and throw 5-yard hooks. He wants to bomb that ball down the field. So I'm looking to, to throw some different rotations at him, see how much rust there is in terms of, disguising what we're looking at, and what, it looks like 2 and it turns out to be 3, or it looks like 3 and it turns out to be quarters. A lot of deep defense. I'm not that worried about the running game. Saskatchewan's defensive line is formidable, and that's going to be an issue, I think, for anybody coming back. I mean, if you're out and you jump right back in, there's nothing like game speed. I think the first game back is going to be a challenge, and I think if you offer some bait defensively and some looks at guys who look like they're open, but then they turn out not to be open, I think Toronto is ripe for that, because we're not a fast team. Toronto's not a fast team, so you can bait more. And of course, Saskatchewan is the turnover king. They absolutely are feeding on turnovers. So I know Coach will have a lot of knowledge about what kind of traps Kelly can fall into, Coach Mace. So from a Saskatchewan point of view, that's what I expect to see: a lot of deep coverage, a lot of umbrella coverage, and allowing the running game and allowing short passes and daring Chad not to want to make a hero throw.
And I would keep, yeah, just like going to, and this is, I guess, for later when I do the Toronto offense, but Roland Milligan has been amazing for the Roughriders D. I still like Sales too.
I mean, he's a huge problem.
Yeah, like he seems to be wherever the ball is going, and so I might make a point of avoiding Roland Milligan, try and stay away from him. But I think he's the energy on that Riders defense, the way that AJ Ouellette is for the Riders O. And so I think, if Saskatchewan can generate some turnovers, they're going to get a lot of confidence really quickly. Let's switch over to the other side of the ball. So if I'm Saskatchewan's offense, how I would play things here, I think you have to be really careful. Toronto has an excellent pass rush. I think it's going to be a really strong pass rush off a week's rest too. I think they've had trouble on their O-line. This is a recipe for disaster for Trevor Harris. So if I'm the OC in Saskatchewan, I'm really trying to get the ball out quickly. And I know I have, over the last few weeks, suggested that teams just abandon the run game against Toronto. I think usually that is the right answer. I don't know if I do that this week. I think you're going with, because AJ Ouellette's out, you're going with a faster back. I wouldn't mind actually using the back in the passing game almost as an extension of the run, and actually hit quick hitters, like quick hitting routes to the outside. Basically swing passes and flat passes. Just catch that ball, fling it out wide, and force the corners to come up and make plays. So that's part of my strategy as well. If Kean Schaefer-Baker is in there, then I'm going to throw up a ton of 50-50 balls to him as well. I want to try and isolate Kean Schaefer-Baker on the outside against the Argo corners, and I will let him go make a play. I've seen Kean Schaefer-Baker win 50-50 matchups like since he was in like grade 7. He will go and find a way to do it. And so if he's healthy, I think that becomes part of your plan, because you don't need to hang on to the ball forever. You can run a 3-step. If you know you've got ISO, if you know that it's going to be one-on-one, whether through match or just man coverage, then yeah, take your quick drop and launch that up there, give it some height, and see if he can go make a play. If he's out, I don't think that necessarily limits you the same way. You still should take some shots. I think that's always a good plan against Toronto until they show otherwise. But I think that you can also try and take advantage of some of those quick hitting concepts that are underneath and look for those to turn into big plays. Toronto's had trouble tackling over the last few games. We saw that against Calgary. And so maybe you can turn some of those quick passes into large gains. And I wouldn't eliminate the screen game either. I think that's stuff that you can go with as well. So it's really about the outsides. You can see my whole theme right now of OCDC is outsides. Keep it outside. Don't let the guys in the middle make a play, and do whatever you can to stay away from that Argos defensive line. All right, JB, let's switch sides to the Toronto Argonauts. What is your defensive plan for the Argos in stopping the Roughriders O?
Well, they looked really good. I mean, they should have beat Montreal. I mean, the field goal kicker just absolutely destroyed them. Trevor Harris looks really good. I think Saskatchewan looked really dangerous last game. However, they rode AJ Ouellette into the ground. I wasn't totally sure what they were doing there. He clearly was in a great deal of physical pain, and they just kept handing him the ball. It seemed perverse from where I sat. But it doesn't surprise me he's out this week. So they grinded him down the dust. I think that's huge. Without McManus there to keep him in control, he would have been a adrenaline hammer in BMO. So I'm not that worried about the running game. Obviously, Trevor Harris threw for over 350 against Montreal. He's incredibly dangerous. He's a veteran quarterback. I think you have to stop the pass. I think this comes down to it. I mean, the defensive line has got to get pressure with 4, and defensively, Harris wants to go down the field. I think that you have to you have to have a light box and you have to stop the pass. You have to keep that pass in check. He's not the best quarterback in the league, but he is quite good. And I think the pass first defense against Saskatchewan is your only hope. I'm looking to do, I would never be in anything less than three, because he's looking to go downfield, and he doesn't necessarily have one receiver that you can focus on. He's pretty good at moving the ball around, but they go down the field pretty quickly. Like I would not get into a bend don't break with Saskatchewan. I would try and get as much pressure on Harris as I can, and really play that pass defense as aggressively as possible in terms of jumping things and hoping that you can get some interceptions, because they look really good against Montreal.
I like that plan. I like the idea of, because like Saskatchewan can't afford to lose Trevor Harris again. I think they know that. He knows that. And so he's looking to minimize the amount of hits he's taking. He knows that this matchup in the trenches favors the Toronto Argonauts. And he's seen the film on Toronto's D-line. He's seen what they can do. And so I do think if you're going to send heat, that ball's going to come out fast. And yeah, I like your plan. Like, look for picks, look for turnovers. I think they've got the guys in place to be able to create some of those. And I think that would be a big difference maker for the Argonauts this week. If we switch to the offensive side of the ball and what they want to do, again, I'm not just limiting the entire game plan to this, but I think a key element to Toronto's game plan this week is Mackay Polk. And the reason for that is I don't think Cameron Dukes or Nick Arbuckle have been able to unleash Mackay Polk to the extent to which he can be unleashed. And a lot of talk about Austin Mack coming back to Montreal this week after his time in the NFL, and we saw what a difference maker Mack was with the Alouettes as a rookie last season. Mackay Polk, I'm telling you, talent-wise, has everything you want in a CFL receiver. He is an extremely talented guy, and I think it's still a secret at this point, because we saw little glimpses of it, but I don't think anyone has come into any game plan at all this year thinking, okay, we got to find an answer for Mackay Polk. That's not what defensive coordinators are thinking. And so now with Chad Kelly in there, who can get guys the ball in a heartbeat, Saskatchewan's going to be looking out for Coxie. They're going to be looking out for Davaris Daniels. Their attention's going to be there. They're certainly going to be paying attention to Kateem Carey in the running game. And I think Mackay Polk is the one guy that might go a little bit under the radar. And I think you're going to be able to find him downfield. I think you're going to be able to find him deep downfield. I think you're going to be able to find him in seams. I think you're going to be able to find him on those deep out routes if the O-line can give Kelly enough time. And I expect him to have a huge day. At least that would be my game plan going into this. Really feature Polk. Now, you do all the other stuff too. I think you can run the football. Saskatchewan's defensive line has been great, but Toronto can run against that D-line. They can run against anyone in the league. This is a good running team. Carey's been playing well. You have to keep that up and then get Chad to be efficient everywhere else. But when you're looking to take a shot, Mackay Polk's the guy. All right, JB, what is your one thing for this week? What one thing will lead to an Argos victory?
I would say the one thing would be, it's hard not to get repetitive in these things. A lot of times they don't do the one thing, and so it gets frustrating. So I don't like picking it. For me, if Toronto can keep Trevor Harris under 300 yards, I think they win the football game.
Yeah, I think so too. I would. A few weeks ago when you talked about I don't remember which team it was. It might have been Montreal, let them run and, to shut down the pass. But I think that's the same thing with the Riders. I think if all they've got is a rushing attack, I think you're going to be okay. And so, yeah, I like that as a one thing. My one thing is two things. 2 touchdown passes. I think you get 2 touchdown passes from Chad Kelly. I think that's the floor. But I think if you get those, I think they're going to put up a ton of points. I think points are going to come from elsewhere. I think they're going to get points in the run game. I think there's a possibility of special teams points playing a factor too. And so, yeah, if you get 2 touchdown passes from Toronto's offense, Toronto's going to be in a really good spot. How's this one end, JB? What is the final score? What's your prediction?
I think Toronto wins. I think that the home crowd is going to be fired up. I think the X game is always an exciting one. Um, Saskatchewan is going to come in and they are going to be hungry. The West, Winnipeg is a sleeping giant that has awoken, and work is only going to get better. So I think Saskatchewan knows they need to rack up wins, and certainly coach would love to win at BMO. So I think it's going to be a hard win, but I think Toronto comes out on top. I think Toronto takes it 35 to 24.
I've been wrong a lot in predictions generally over the years, but every so often I feel pretty confident about a prediction. And this is one of those cases. I really can't see Toronto losing this game. I don't think this solves problems for the rest of the season, but I think they are going to come out of the gate on fire this week. I think it is going to be a bit of a wake-up call for the rest of the league too, to be like, oh man, we spent all last week worrying about Winnipeg having woken up. Here's this Toronto team at 5-4 that suddenly is playing lights out football. I think that's all going to happen this week against Saskatchewan. I think they put up a big number, and I think I could even be on the conservative side here, but I have Toronto winning 34-24. I think it's a fun one.
That's my score.
What's that?
I said that was my score.
34-24.
Well, essentially,
that's not what I heard you say.
I believe I said 35-24.
Yeah, 34-24. And yeah, I think they're up the whole way. I think this game is never particularly in doubt, and Saskatchewan maybe gets a couple of late points. But I think it's gonna be fun for the fans at BMO Field for sure. All right, let's get into Put Me Down for 20. This was not a good week for us last week on Put Me Down for 20. I think we got a little overconfident with our big wins the week before, and we were rolling in golden fleeces, JB. Before we get to our bets for this week, our fictional bets for this week, please remember not to take anything we say very seriously in this segment. I would not risk any of your hard-earned money on anything we say, and so only ever bet what you're happy to lose is the cost of entertainment. We got wiped out last week, and so we're left with I have 214 and a half golden fleeces. You have 207.2 golden fleeces. I'll go first. My Argos bet off of my OCDC, Mackay Polk. I found a prop for Mackay Polk at 60 plus receiving yards for plus 165. And I thought that sounds good to me. I think Mackay Polk can get more than 60 yards. That pays nicely at plus 165. So 10 golden fleeces, and that's my Argos bet. And my other bet, I've got a parlay here that also involves the Argos. I think I'm allowed to do that. I've got, did we make a rule about that? No, I think we've allowed that in the past. But I've got the Lions -1 and the Argos -1.5 in a parlay for plus 284. And that's my 20 golden fleeces. What are you doing with your golden fleeces, JB?
I'm going to go with Davaris Daniels getting a touchdown at a plus 145. I think he's due for a good game. And my other one is I have Montreal's defense scoring a touchdown against Edmonton. And I wanted to pick the over in that game, but the books are onto it. There is just no juice for an Edmonton over. So I'm going to go Montreal getting a touchdown at plus 370.
All right. We'll see how we do this week. Hopefully we rebound nicely. And lastly, our CFL picks. Not a great week for you last week at 1-3. Although I think you may have been hosed on one of them and you got lucky on another one. I can't believe your one win was Montreal over Saskatchewan, which had no business happening whatsoever. But here we are. I was 2-2 on the week. Edmonton and Winnipeg coming through for me. So I'm at 27-16-1. You are 23-20-1. Let's get to this week, JB. I have honors Saskatchewan at Toronto. I'm taking Toronto. Where do you land on this one?
Same. I take Toronto at home.
Hamilton at Winnipeg. I actually paused on this one. This one seems so obvious, but this is one of those games that catches you and catches me specifically every single season. I would pay very close attention to this game. I'm going to take Winnipeg, But if I were placing wagers, I would not go anywhere near that game. I think Winnipeg wins. It's very logical. They're playing great football right now, especially defensively. But things are shaking up a little bit in Hamilton. Winnipeg's always a little bit weird too. They've got some history, some recent history. Where are you going, JB?
I agree. I'd love to take Hamilton. Think that maybe the defense plays really fast, but I think Winnipeg is just now moving into a whole new gear. I like Winnipeg.
BC at Ottawa. I think BC is going to put on a show this week after not putting on a show this past week. I've got, and I haven't, Ottawa is the bane of my existence right now. I've picked against Ottawa, I think, in 10 of the 12 weeks so far, every week except their bye weeks, and they have proven me wrong again and again and again. BC wins this week. I failed to yield. Who's taking this one for you, JB?
I know. I agree. I think Rourke. I think Rourke bounces back. Oh, God. All right. I am going to take. I'm going to take BC. I hate Ottawa as well. I can't figure them out. I'm not going to watch the game. I'm so tired of watching Ottawa games. I think Rourke bounces back. I think they take care of business. Surely to God, there's reason in this world.
Edmonton at Montreal. This might be a fun one too. Remember, Edmonton played Montreal really tight. I think it was like week 2 of the season. I actually think Edmonton matches up pretty well against Montreal, better than most, and that may go under the radar. I'm still picking Montreal because they're playing better football than anyone else right now, and they are at home. But I do think that's going to be a good game. Where are you going in this one?
I know this is another one. I really, really wanted to take Edmonton. You know what? I am going to take Edmonton.
All right.
I am going to take Edmonton. Look, I know Montreal at home, but God hates a coward.
Saskatchewan, Toronto, Thursday night, the C&E game, 7:30 start at BMO Field. That will just about do it for us on this pregame walkthrough edition of the X's and Argos podcast. For JB, this has Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.